Well, Merrily, thanks so much for taking some time to hang with me today. I appreciate it.
Nice to be here, David. Thank you for asking.
Tell me why you are so passionate about home health care. I don't come across too many people in
Mhm.
my life that are passionate about, that particular need in our culture. And why are you passionate about home health care versus the other options that might be available to people?
Well, I actually had a business that provided healthcare at home for almost 20 years and approached it from a standpoint of what people needed if they wanted to age at home. And it usually was before people entered the healthcare delivery system in some type of an acute episode. So my passion is, I guess, that groundswell that I discovered when I started providing the service and realized that at the time, and again, I was a pioneer in providing healthcare at home services in a model that we now it's pretty common today. But what I found is that people who have a care need oftentimes don't know where to go. And so by my educating about the options for healthcare at home, it it does give people a choice that they might not get if they're in the healthcare delivery system, the traditional healthcare delivery system. They go to a hospital or they go to a rehab facility. Sometimes they don't get accurate information about how they could get some of that care at home. So I am passionate about educating when it's appropriate for people to choose home.
Yeah. So you just said when it's appropriate for people to choose home. As our listeners have family members who age or have just challenges that come up no matter what their age is, what are the levels of care that can be provided at home?
There is no limit to the level of care that can be provided at home. And actually, as technology is enhanced and as technology more developments come available, we in the healthcare delivery system are taking care of more and more people at all different levels at home.
Am I having
But
heart surgery at home, Merrily? You said all
you
levels. Come on now.
I'm sure they are. There are people probably having heart surgery at home. I would not recommend that.
It's
Um,
probably pretty pricey though.
yes, yes, it would be. I think the idea would be for recuperation. So from your heart surgery, yes, you could recuperate at home fairly easily, and you could actually have a physician or a physician's assistant come visit you. You might actually, after your heart surgery, find yourself in a less invasive environment for any type of diseases because where people congregate together, if they have any type of diseases or viruses or whatever, then that spreads. So sometimes bringing people home, even if they're pretty sick, is the best place for them if
Hmm.
there's adequate care in place. That's the caveat,
Hmm.
because you
So,
don't obviously have that group setting. It's just one patient.
right now, for those of us who maybe have not, and I'm not having heart surgery anytime
Good,
soon, Merrily, just so you know.
hopefully.
And so, if there are, like, talk to us about the most common ways that people are cared for at home. You know what I mean? Like, I think about, obviously, there's post operational care.
Mhm.
What are some other situations where people would need care at home?
Well, let me first say that aging is not a one size fits all process. So, your whatever happened, we all know it's like your automobile, things are going to go bad as it gets older. So, same with us, as we get older, things are going to go bad. What goes bad is going to also determine whether or not you have the capacity to stay at home. So, in general, if you do not, I'm going to take the cognitive issues, dementia, Alzheimer's, and put them aside for a minute
Hmm.
because that changes the whole scenario. If you have someone who is confused, then the care level changes immediately
Okay.
because they're not making decisions that would be in their best interest. So, for everybody else, the key is really not what is the matter with you. The key is, do you have a support system that can help professionals that are coming in to care for you, that can help them extend that care?
Hmm.
So once you get to a point where you need 24/7 care, and the determining factor for that is, can you get up and down out of your bed and get to the toilet? So if you can toilet yourself, if you can ambulate into the bathroom or use a bedside toilet at night so you don't have to have someone up every time you have to go to the bathroom, that's really the delineating factor in terms of should someone stay at home or should someone go somewhere else.
Okay.
So it doesn't
Can
really matter what it is, it just
right.
matters
Can
how
you use the
sick you are.
restroom? Right.
Yes,
Can you use the
by
restroom? Is
yourself, can you
by
get up and
yourself, of
down?
course. Right. Right. Interesting. Okay. So anything really, you're just saying you have any challenge, as long as you can use the restroom, you can have somebody come in and care for you. And you would hope though that there are family members that would be able to extend that service beyond when someone was be able to be there.
Yes, you asked, like, for specific kinds of things. So
Hmm.
87% of the people, according to AARP, would like to age in place at home. So
Hmm.
these are not people that have had an acute episode, like you said, an accident or a recovery or an operation or something, but anyone who's aging and who might have diabetes or COPD or any other types of issues, um, they can stay at home um, as long as they are safe.
Hmm.
And the benefits of being at home, obviously, number one, you're not exposed to other people who have any type of issues. But the other thing is it's a familiar surroundings.
Hmm.
And part of our healing process is being comfortable where we are. So that's what home offers that other places don't offer.
Right. Right. One of the challenges that people are facing these days are the cognitive issues, the
Yes.
confusion, the dementia. When that begins to surface, um, what are the appropriate questions to ask and next steps to take?
The first thing I would suggest would be, if someone has a loved one that is experiencing cognitive issues, is to educate yourself. Connect. There's lots of resources out there through the Alzheimer's Association. There's different practitioners that work with cognitively impaired people. There's lots and lots of books. And I would educate yourself first, because what happens with a cognitive issue is we are used to responding to someone in a certain way, and we're used to that response being two ways, and we're used to someone having um, clear understanding of what they're saying. And when the cognitive issues are so bizarre, because people are not thinking clearly and they're not remembering, so how you deal with a person who has those cognitive issues is incredibly important. And understanding, don't argue with them. For instance, if they say, I want to go home, but their home isn't the home they want to go to, in their head might be a home from their childhood or a home from their first marriage,
Right.
or their parents' home. I mean, it's the home. You don't know what's inside that person's head. So don't argue with them. They like routine. A routine is great to have, which is easy to do in the home if you understand that you're doing that. I would say the first thing to do would be to make certain that you get the person into, and I would recommend a geriatric evaluation and treatment center, which usually is associated with the university. And what that geriatric evaluation will do, number one, is find out what's the core root of this cognitive deficit, because sometimes it's malnourishment. um,
Mm.
if you live alone and you've tried to cook for one person, you'll understand it's very difficult to have a balanced meal and to have balanced meals throughout a long time period. So that's one of the first things that we look for is, are there other things? Is it malnourishment? Is it medication mismanagement? Some people are on medications they've been on for 20 years. They should have stopped them. So there's all kinds of reasons why someone might have a cognitive issue that has nothing to do with having a dementia or Alzheimer's. So that would be the first thing to do, is rule out what is the cause, the root cause of this dementia. And is it something we can fix, or is it something we know we're going to have to live with? Because if they do have Alzheimer's disease, you are looking at a degenerative long-term progression in this disease, which eventually leads to death.
Hmm. And oftentimes is unsafe for that individual to stay at home by themselves 24
Yes.
hours, you know? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And so you mentioned a geriatric, say that again.
Geriatric Evaluation and Treatment Center.
Okay. And so if I went to my family member's medical doctor and said, hey, I've got some concerns here, they may or may not refer me to that. So how would I be able to find one of those?
You can Google it, Geriatric Evaluation and Treatment Centers. There are those centers all over the country, normally associated with the teaching university.
Okay. And will
The
insurance cover that?
Depends on your insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it would, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a total workup, so it
Mm-hmm.
would be covered. The other resource is an Aging Life Care Manager, and that is under Aging Life Care Association. You can Google Aging Life Care Association, and that will not be covered, but what you get is a nurse or a social worker who can also help you look at the current situation, do an assessment of the situation, and then make a recommendation in terms of what should the next steps be.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes people skip that step, and when they skip that step, they make bad decisions. For instance, if you moved your parents out of their home thinking that this was it, and they weren't functioning anymore and they needed to be in some type of a facility,
Mm-hmm.
and then it turns out they were malnourished, or there was a medication contraindication, and then you've sold the house and you've got them moved someplace else. So
And that happens.
it happens a lot. Yes.
Oh my goodness. I would be very upset if I was the parent.
Yes, you
Yes.
would. You'd be
Yeah.
very upset. So making certain, and I guess you're assessing the situation in essence to make certain you're making the right decision. So
Okay.
I would recommend that.
Yeah, that sounds very wise. Okay. So now let's talk about you've helped us identify where our first step is if there's a potentially a cognitive issue. If there are other challenges um, that can be cared for in the context of the home. I go to my doctor. I talk to my neighbor. I Google. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm confused. I'm going, where do I find this
Right.
stuff? None of my friends have had this challenge yet. Like, I want to care for my parents. I've heard nightmares. I've seen these Dateline things of people, abusing parents. You know what I mean? Like, I'm nervous. What,
Right.
my head's spinning. I got a full-time job. I got little kids. What do I do?
Well, the scary part, and as I said earlier, is aging is not a one-size-fits-all process. So your particular situation, David, is going to be different than your neighbor's situation.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have to do is step back, find someone who can actually look at the current situation, look at the family support system, look at the finances available, look at the insurance that's available, and look at the specific services that are available in the community, and then help you make a plan to move forward. And that would be an aging life care manager, or you might find a physician who is certified in geriatrics, because just as you go to pediatricians for your children, you would also want to find someone who understands geriatrics so that they're helping you make that decision. So that would be the starting point. And it really does vary depending on the state, the locale, and the actual diagnosis or the problem that the person's having.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to get this word wrong because I've only heard you say it a couple times, but the life manager, what was it? No,
Aging life care manager.
Aging life care manager. I keep wanting to say end of life care manager. That's a different person. That's a death doula. We're not here to talk about that. Aging life care manager.
Which used to be called, just to confuse things, a geriatric care manager. So you can still Google geriatric care management and find the Aging Life Care Manager Association and find people that are in your area that will help you.
It's a politically correct way of saying you're getting old. Aging life care manager. I don't want to be called a geriatric anymore. I don't want to be taking those. What were those pills that were always advertised on TV? What was that? Like the vitamins? for people that were older? What was that name? Do you
Was it
remember that?
Geritol? Is that what
Geritol, yes.
Thank you. You just showed my age.
Yes. Hey, at least you can remember it. That was one of the test questions on the cognitive dissonance quiz. Yeah. So Geritol. this episode sponsored by Geritol. Now the cost associated with this aging life care manager, do they offer, I'm sure they have packages of like a one-time thing versus walking you through the process. I know they're probably priced different across the United States, but give us an idea. Is this $50? Is this 500, 5,000?
Well, I think it really depends on the length of time they stay. It is out of pocket, and I would say an average is probably $100 an hour for a professional to come and assess the situation. So you're probably looking at 2 to 3 hours, maybe up to 5 hours, something like that.
And they
So
would have recommendations in your geographic area, obviously, based on what you would need.
that's the key,
Oh
is
my
that
goodness. This
each
is money well spent.
it is so much money well spent, or so little money well spent for such a positive return. And again, I've seen so many situations where people don't do that. And the problem, if you don't do that, is you might, as I said earlier, get in the wrong place or get in a situation that you can't get out of. Now, you didn't ask me about cost of care, so I'm going to talk about that if
We're
that's
getting there.
okay.
Yeah, no, let's
You want
talk
me
about
to
it.
throw that now?
No, it's great.
Because our country does not pay for long-term care. And most people don't understand that. And all this, I don't want to be political here, but this Medicare for all talk right now, people don't understand. They think Medicare is going to take care of them as they get older, and that is not the case. Medicare pays for acute situations,
Okay.
and even the healthcare at home component of Medicare is for either an acute situation or hospice. So there's not anything available that the government pays for right now that is long-term care in the home.
Now,
Having said,
tell me back to long-term care in the home. We didn't get to that first. What does that actually look like? Like if I don't have a cognitive issue and I don't have an acute issue and I'm not dying, what does care in the home look like or mean?
well, primarily it's to make certain that you're being taken care of, that you're eating,
Okay.
that you're clean,
Okay.
that your house is clean and habitable.
Okay.
Okay, that's really the basics.
Okay. And so if I don't have a family member nearby, and even if I do have a family member nearby, I might not be telling them the truth.
Or they could be working,
Right.
or they could have a family that they have to care for.
Right.
So I mean, they may not have the time. And you made a great point, though, David, about oftentimes the person who is suffering the problems is not going to let their kids know that they're
I don't want to burden them. I don't want them to be
no,
worried about me. You know
no.
what I mean? Like that's what they're probably thinking.
Yeah, no, they do think that.
Yeah.
And if they have any other issues, like I was amazed at how many alcohol issues I found. I told you when I had my home care business, and that the family didn't know about. So they would wonder, mom might have fallen. Well, you find out mom had a whole stash of empty vodka bottles under the sink hidden that you wouldn't have
Oh,
found.
yeah.
So oftentimes there's other issues that families are hiding.
Mm-hmm.
But from a payment standpoint, if you are eligible for Medicaid, which is services for really indigent people, so someone who has very low income and very low resources.
Mm-hmm.
Medicaid, gets so complicated, is a state-funded program that will provide long-term community support services, which would be making certain people have meals, doing housekeeping, making certain that they have food in, that they're getting their medications, those kinds of things. So
Mm-hmm.
there is that option and that component for those people who absolutely cannot pay.
Okay.
And there's a whole industry that has grown up, the elder law attorney industry, that helps people who have some assets but are not indigent, helps them spend down their assets legally so that no one is harmed, so that they can then become eligible for some long-term community support services.
What? Are you kidding me?
No, I'm serious.
How do you spend down your assets then legal? Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, you're not an attorney with this, but come on, you know the secret. So how do they
Well,
stash their money?
you're spending it on care for the most part.
Okay.
There's some assets you can keep. Again, it varies state to state. So there's 50 different options for
Mm-hmm.
this, but the elder law attorneys in that state understand those options. There are windows, so you could give some assets away, but you cannot do them within a window of so many years. So it's really would be important to look at those things now. If I would say anyone that has $100,000 or less in family assets should be looking to see if something happens and I need care, what's my best option? And is there something I should do now to prepare for that later?
And
So,
that's in order for Medicaid to possibly cover you, because you would
yes,
be then considered, in your language, indigent. And indigent, for those of us who, I don't use that word very often, Merrily, I'm
no,
just going to tell you. So,
no.
like, what what does that mean
Well,
technically?
in some states, you have to have less than $3,000 in assets.
Okay, so it just
Um,
depends on
and there's a
the
monthly
state.
income limitation. Yes. So,
Yeah,
I
okay,
mean,
that makes
it's,
sense. All right, and that
um,
would then, does Medicaid then possibly cover? I know this is state to state, uh, in a home, and not at your home, but in a facility.
there are Medicaid beds in facilities. There's also long-term community support services that are at home.
Yeah.
And then there's all kinds of ancillary services that provide support to people to stay at home. Meals for Wheels, Meals on
Hmm.
Wheels, for
Hmm.
instance. That has nothing to do with the government. That's
Hmm.
completely voluntary.
Nonprofit.
But
Yeah.
that program actually does help people stay at home.
Right.
And
Right.
there's other ones like that.
Hmm.
So it's a which is why I say get an assessment and ask people
Right.
first, because we have created the most complicated scenarios in order to age in place, or to age, period.
Hmm.
So and you never know, I'm healthy today. I might walk outside and fall down and break something, and I'm not going to be healthy tomorrow after that.
Hmm.
And what happens when I go in the hospital, if I get delirious or come home with a delirium and that's misdiagnosed, then I can spiral down into something that is very unpleasant. So we don't have a roadmap right now on what to do with aging in place. So you really do have to take each situation and deal with it,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
We had a guest on a while back named Cameron Huddleston, and she wrote a book, and I'm pulling it up here just so I get the name right,
Uh-huh.
um, called "Mom and Dad, We Need to Talk: How to Have Essential Conversations with Your Parents About Their Finances." And one of the things that she talks about in the book is not only a power of attorney, but a medical power of attorney. How does that play out, the need for a medical power of attorney, in the context of the things that you're talking about?
Well, I think the healthcare surrogate, or the medical power of attorney, is someone who will help you make a decision when you are no longer capable of making that decision.
End of life, pretty much. Or
End of
or
life,
or cognitive issues.
yes, end of life or cognitive issues.
Hmm.
Everyone should have a will.
Hmm.
Everyone should have a healthcare surrogate who would help be who can make those decisions for them.
Hmm.
And I don't know and again, the name of those things vary from state to state, but each state does have their own rules, and each state has their own forms. And
Hmm.
one of the things that I interviewed for my podcast, the Help Choose Home podcast, Dr. Timothy Ehrig, who is a very well-known palliative care physician, and his whole philosophy is we're all going to die. It's something that happens when you are born, then you start that dying process. Some of us die sooner, some die later. But the key is, instead of dealing with death and how do you want to die, his suggestion is you think about how do you want to live. So if you really think about how you want to live and you talk to your family about that and you talk to your healthcare surrogate or your medical power of attorney about that, they will then be able to make the right decision for you should the time
Mm-hmm.
come when you can't make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Mine, for instance, knows I do not want any artificial means to keep me alive. If I'm in a situation where I'm going to be kept alive by a machine, I do not want that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm active, I like to travel, I've got a lot of wide interests, and I want to be able to continue those as I age.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind if I'd like to be physically active and mentally active, obviously, for the rest of my life. But if something happens and I can't be, then I do want my medical power of attorney to make those decisions for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now that we're doing research, but now it comes to, all right, I'm figuring out what I can afford, what I can't afford, what my insurance will provide. We didn't talk about insurance so much, and I know insurance is so across the board. I'm assuming some provides nothing, some provides everything. Depends on what you pay for, what you have.
Well, the long-term care insurance is specific.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk
And
about this.
and long-term care insurance is available, but it is very specific and it's outside of any of the regular insurance policies. So you would have to contract with a long-term care insurance provider in order to have long-term care covered.
Hmm.
So, and a very small percentage of Americans have long-term care insurance. It's under 10%, and it's been
Hmm.
available in the market for at least 30 years now. So, but regular insurance, you'd have to check and see what does it cover. Most does not cover home health care.
Hmm.
There are some new Medicare Advantage plans who are some of those plans are just starting to cover some of the things that I'm talking about, aging in place and home health aides coming into your home and some help with what we call the basic activities of daily living, feeding
Hmm.
yourself, dressing yourself, getting
Hmm.
up and walking around.
Do you
Um,
have that additional insurance that you were talking about? That
I do. Of course I
you
do. I
do.
saw what it costs in order to have care when I had my own company, and so I bought it when I was 50. So
Okay,
for my husband and me. So
and that's a monthly payment that you make, or
it's an annual payment,
annual payment? Okay.
and it's not inexpensive.
Hmm.
But I really did not want to be completely wiped out by having to have long-term care and didn't want my family to suffer that. So
Okay,
we do that.
and that price range varies from what to what, would you say?
I really don't know that, but there is people can Google Mary Glenn Bowles, Boals. She
Okay,
is my resource for long-term care insurance,
great.
and has been she is a geriatric specialist, and she also has been in the insurance industry for a long time. So
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's super
yeah.
helpful. Now, as I'm looking to actually hire people now, um, how do I go about that? I assume, it's just like anything. If I'm going to buy a car, some people are going to be trustworthy and, tell you what you do and don't need. Um, this is a great example. What a metaphor. My son's car, 2014 Ford Focus, it's a few years old, having some transmission issues. I take it to a place that had been recommended. They said, oh, it looks like a transmission issue. Take it to this transmission shop. I took it to Leon's Transmission, Merrily.
Hmm.
I don't even know if Leon even exists. The guy there said, yes, it's a transmission issue, but I think there were so many problems with this with Ford. I think it's still under an extended warranty because Ford had so many problems.
Oh wow.
The guy could have charged me $2,000 and I would have paid it. I would have paid it. I would have been bummed. I would have paid it. He was honest. I went to Ford, cost me nothing, zero, because Ford had the. I'm sure there are people like that in the industry, right? That are super kind. Others that are just looking to sell their services. I need to make a quota. I got sales goals, right? How do I figure out? Number one, you told me I've got to figure out what I actually need, which is through the person aging well,
Aging Life Care
aging life care
Association.
associate. Yes. Okay, they're going to help me understand what I need. Now I've got all these options. How do I actually pick one?
Well, that's the difficult part, which is why I suggest someone to help you with that. There, within the industry, there are lots of different levels. So if you're looking to stay at home with care and you want to hire that care,
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of franchises out there, but there's also credentialing um, organizations. So there's different, like the Joint Commission on Healthcare is a credentialing organization. CHAP, Community Health Providers, is a credentialing organization. ACHC, so there's several credentialing organizations. I would look to see, is the agency that you're looking at credentialed? Has
Mm-hmm.
someone, a third party service, verified that they know what they're doing and that they provide good care?
Mm-hmm.
I would also look at if they're a member of any national organizations. I'm in the National Association for Home Care and Hospice is one of the associations that helps us sponsor my Help Choose Home podcast. And NAHC.org is a place you could go. There is another, there's the Healthcare Association of America, Home Care Association of America. So there's a variety of organizations that are going to provide some type of guidance for these agencies.
Mm-hmm.
What I would not recommend in the beginning is hiring your own caregivers. Mrs. Smith down the street has a bunch of caregivers and they've been caring for her. And so you think, well, I could just use that. Well, there's several problems with that. One is that, number one, you become the employer and your household homeowner's insurance is not going to cover an injury or an accident if that person has that accident while they're working in your home. So there's a lot of risks for that. There's also risks for financial abuse if you have someone in the home
Mm-hmm.
who is not being monitored and supervised. So there's certainly lots of times where people do that successfully, but
Mm-hmm.
they generally have a background in either HR or some other thing that would allow them to be able to monitor and supervise those home
Mm-hmm.
settings. So I would also check references. With the internet, you can really check
I
and
assume there's
see.
reviews on
There
these.
are lots of reviews.
Yeah.
Yes, Yelp has great reviews. There's reviews. There's a organization called Homecare Pulse that has reviews. When you start looking at this elder care issue, there's lots and lots of resources. The key is to understand what's a legitimate resource or what's not a legitimate resource. So I would look for the credentialing. I would look for people of members of organizations, make certain that it's a good organization. We
Mm-hmm.
have, gosh, probably at least 100 franchised home care businesses in the country now.
Wow.
You've noticed we're aging, so
Right. Yeah.
the numbers are pretty astronomical. So there's a lot of services out there now that are available.
And we're living longer because of healthcare, which could be a good thing, but we're also could be hobbling into death because of, you know what I mean, all the medications that can keep us alive. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
living to 100, Merrily. I'm living to 100.
good.
I'm gonna die in my sleep on my 100th birthday. Just bam. I told my wife, wake up the next day, just expect me to be dead.
When you're 100.
Yeah.
Well, good luck to that. That's
Yeah.
great. I wish we all had the choice to do that. That would be wonderful. That's the other thing is we haven't talked about this, but in order to avoid all of this, that's what you said. It's really just staying healthy. So,
Mm-hmm.
and
From the very beginning. Mm-hmm.
well, the key to that is being active,
Mm-hmm. Physically,
exercising,
mentally.
obviously, eating right. There's a lot of keys in life to keeping us healthy and happy. So it's only when that bad thing happens that you don't expect is when you need to know this, which from the very beginning I said, until it happens, you're not going to be interested in what the options are. So
Right.
that's why my Help Choose Home podcast is a resource for people when they are faced with this and they're in their car and they have no idea what to do next. So
Yeah, yeah. So helpchoosehome.com is a great resource to be able to listen to all sorts of interviews on these particular issues. We're just skimming the surface.
right,
On your podcast, you're going
right.
deep on each one of the issues.
Well, and again, it's everyone's situation is different. And so it is so hard to come up with something that's going to make your mom and dad happy, that's going to make all of your siblings happy,
Hmm.
that you'll be able to afford, and that also is care that you can stay with from frailty to death. So,
Hmm.
and sometimes there's a lot of time between frailty and death, and sometimes there's not. So
Hmm.
it's when you have the long time in between that it becomes an issue.
Yeah. A couple of other resources that I know you've mentioned in us talking. One is a website called Access, AXXESS.com. What are the resources that are available on this website?
Access is a company in Dallas that is a healthcare technology company. They support the industry and they have a lot of resources on their website, not only to help people who purchase their products, which are products related to businesses who are helping people stay at home, the home healthcare industry and the home care industry, but they have a lot of other resources. They're a very community minded, civic minded organization. And they are one of the sponsors of Help Choose Home.
Great. One last question. Somebody's listening today and perhaps they've seen some challenges in a, a family member, whether it's a cognitive challenge, a physical challenge, whatever it might be. And maybe they're dragging their feet a little bit because they feel overwhelmed by
Yes.
all the stuff that you've just talked about. This is going to require me having to sit down, focused in front of the computer, start to look at some deals, set up an appointment with the person. You know what I mean? It's going to take some time and what could you say to them to support them or encourage them as they're beginning this journey?
That they're not alone. There's always someone, you may feel like your situation is unique, but there's always been someone who has experienced close to that same situation. And there's usually not an immediate need for help either. I mean, unless someone's fallen or had a caregiver who died, and all of a sudden you've got that need, you usually have some time. The other thing I would strongly recommend is, and you mentioned it earlier, have that conversation with your parents. Make certain that all of their finances are in order, that their paperwork is in order, that you know where everything is, so that someone can come in and not take over, but someone can come in and make sense of things if they have to. But you're really not alone. There's all types of support that can be had, but you have to be open to it. The only other thing I'll say is that one, I see this a lot. Children get angst about their parents. The parent is not making good decisions. You have to realize the parent is an adult, unless they're cognitively impaired, capable of making those bad decisions. So if, my mom wants to smoke and she shouldn't be smoking, I certainly can't take the cigarettes away and hide them because that ain't going to solve the problem. So I think it's understanding that nature will take its course, and sometimes people, regardless of age, have to have an experience to make certain that they understand what the ramifications of that are. So, the hard part is divorcing yourself from the emotion associated with it because you feel responsible. So, I would say get help, seek support groups, and learn to go with the flow.
And hide the cigarettes and vodka. Can't get it out of their hands.
They'll find it no matter where you hide it. I can tell you that.
Well, and now with all of the delivery services, Uber Eats, you know what I mean?
That's
It's like they're just
right.
ordering cigarettes and vodka on their phone.
And they are.
Oh my
Trust me,
goodness.
they are.
Merrily, thank you so much. I love your energy and just, this is a very serious subject, but I love the lightness and the delight that you bring to it because
Oh,
you're serving people and it's very obvious. So thank you so much for all the wisdom.
thank you. Thank you, David. It was a pleasure for me as well. Let's hope we do live to be 100 and die in our sleep, okay? I'm with you on that one.
It sounds good.